Welcome to Conversations with the Planets with Lori Kaufman and Alicia Heiser, a podcast that roots the wisdom of the stars into our lived experiences here on Earth and weaves the power of diverse healing modalities together with astrology. And today we have our guest Devon Heyn on to talk about self-care and astrology. So welcome, Devon. How are you doing?
Yay! Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here. I feel like this is just synchronistic how I met Lori just a month ago and then I'm pulled into your orbit. So I'm very grateful. And this topic is near and dear to my heart because I know just like the two of you, I kind of straddle the astrology and physical well-being spaces. So
Yeah.
I'm also breathwork facilitator, meditation teacher, yoga teacher, national board certified health and wellness coach, plant-based nutrition educator, and podcast host as well. So my podcast is called It's All Magic, and we really dive into all of the topics I love most, from astrology to intuition, manifestation, finding your purpose, your calling in life, nutrition, exercise, like everything, human design, you name it, and it's on the podcast. So, anyway, I'm also a multi passionate soul like both of you, and I'm just excited to be here and to talk about such an important topic.
That's
Absolutely.
awesome. Yeah, thank you for sharing a bit about like who you are and what you do. And that's definitely, I feel like a lot of healers just have all of these different modalities that we're connecting and
Yeah.
working with. And I think that'll really come through in this episode, just talking about different ways to tap into how we can tend to ourselves and care for ourselves and look to our
Yeah.
birth charts for some guidance on tools for doing that
Mhm.
as well.
Absolutely. And just quickly on that note, that I'll share is that I've really had to come to terms with being this multi passionate soul because I
Mm.
feel like we live in a world where you are either an astrologer or you're the breathwork girl or you are the wellness YouTuber, or like you kind of have to niche down, or at least that's what people say you have to do. And
Yeah.
so to be someone that is passionate about so many things, like even you, Alicia, I know you do herbalism and astrology, and Lori, you have your yoga and also breath work. Like we all have multiple things.
Mhm.
And I have felt more comfortable stepping into that thanks to my birth chart, actually. I mean, for
Yeah.
me being a Gemini rising, I just came to terms with the fact that I'm always going to be fascinated by a million and one things, and maybe that's okay. So I just want to kind of start this conversation with that for all of us, we have those aspects of ourselves that we might struggle with, and just know that it's part of your natal promise, baby. Like it's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think there's a lot to be said about that alone too. Like I feel like I host a lot of workshops at the shop. And I've been getting really into sound healing and I've been hosting a lot of sound baths. I've been doing a lot of guided meditations with them. I Yeah, I teach all sorts of fitness classes. I have 8 different fitness certifications. I taught kids in schools for years, yoga, breathwork, mindfulness, all those things. And I feel like a big part of what really got me into astrology at first was understanding like the elements and the temperament. And, we've talked a lot about that on here too. But just understanding what you don't have in your chart can be like such a great way to start with like, what do you need? How do you need to fill those holes? And
Mhm.
also like, yeah, finding a niche has always been like a big thing that, it's like, well, why do I have to? Why do we
Yeah.
need to do that?
Yeah. I think those earthy souls might be able to niche down a little bit
Yeah.
easier.
Yeah, I think we collectively have what, maybe like one earth placement.
Exactly. Exactly. Speaking of that, do you guys just want to
Mhm.
dive into kind of the elements as being part
Yeah.
of self-care? I know you guys have talked about it before, but I feel like
Mhm.
we can't talk about this topic without at least brushing on the elements a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I would love to hear your guys' take, but for me, I
Mhm.
feel like self-care related to the elements is kind of twofold. The first is leaning into the elements that you have a lot of and not having shame in that. So I'm guessing all of us here, but I know for me personally, I have a ton of air and fire. And so for me, movement, talking, learning, traveling,
Yeah.
adventure, play, joy, those things, I don't have to be ashamed of the fact that I both have a lot of those, so I gravitate naturally towards it, but I also
Mhm.
need that to stoke my fire, to keep my air moving. And so I think that's the first part, which is leaning into what you have naturally. And then the second part, as I know you guys have talked about on past podcasts, is tending to what you don't have. And so when I
Yeah.
lean too far into, especially let's say that air, I'm completely ungrounded. I'm sure all three of us have been there. And so that earth element, really just meditating amongst the trees, holding on to a crystal, going to a sound bath. It's those things that kind of bring me back to center. So that's kind of my general take, which is leaning into what you already have, but also tending to what you don't have. I would love to hear your take and if there's anything you'd add to that.
Yeah. And I have an elements lecture that I've done several times at a lot of really big events. And that's something I talk about a lot is like, yes, like the element that you have the most of, or the two elements that you might have the most of, are definitely going to be the things that you are the best at. Like this is your talent, your strength in life. And so leaning into that strength is absolutely going to bring you gifts and abilities and all sorts of things. But leaning into the element that you don't have is going to be something that really balances you out. And so I think there is typically a point where you start to realize this by yourself, where you're like, oh my God, I don't have any earth in my chart. I'm not grounded. Maybe I should blank. Or people who don't have water are always so drawn to the ocean, right? Like you just naturally start to find yourself being really drawn to the thing that you don't have. But I also see that there's some resistance with it sometimes as well. So I have the Uranus Neptune conjunction in Capricorn, which is the only earth I have in my chart. And then I have my Aries moon, which is the only fire I have in my chart.
Mhm.
Um, and so I technically lack fire, but my Aries moon is like the loudest thing in my chart. And it is my chart ruler, and it is on my MC, and it is in a mutual reception to my Mars on my ascendant. And so it just like my Aries moon, whereas like yes, I don't have fire, it like, well, it's kind of the loudest. Whereas the earth has always been something I think I kind of fought with a little
Yeah.
because it wasn't something I like felt like I had or like wanted. And then I always feel like there's an indifference as well. Sorry about the cuddle button that's going off if you can hear that. Somebody needs
I can't.
attention. Okay,
I
good.
can't, but that's so cute. And my dog
He's
is like
obsessively pressing
in
the
the
button.
my dog's in the other room, like kind of freaking out right now too. I have like
Oh no.
Saturn in the sixth in a night chart, and it's like this grumpy old misbehaved dog. So,
Yeah.
um,
Well, I've
but
got cuddle, 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 cuddle.
but the other thing I'll say, and sometimes like you might just have pure water in your chart, and then you really need to lean
Yeah.
into air, fire, and earth, right? So sometimes
Right.
it's one element or multiple. I'm similar to Lori, where at least in my natal
Mhm.
chart, the only earth I have is Uranus and Neptune in Capricorn as well.
Mhm.
Um, but when you have, an element that you're trying to lean into because you don't have much of it in your chart, there's so much opportunity there. Because when like if you have a lot of air, then that air energy is already, it kind of has these pathways where it flows through your life in like the, Venus and Gemini, this like Venusian way, or like these kind
Mhm.
of set patterns that you're really used to. But when you don't have a lot of a certain element, there's not as much patterning there, which gives you a lot more opportunity to build a relationship with that element in a way that you'd like. And
Yeah.
another thing you can look at too is timing with that, because sometimes it shifts over time. So with my earth in my natal chart, I don't have any, but now my progressed MC is in Virgo, my progressed
Mhm.
Venus is in Capricorn, and I'm a Libra rising, so that's really prominent. And then
Mhm.
my progressed Mars just moved into Capricorn as well. And so you can look to see if perhaps you get more of these elements or less of these elements as time
Yeah.
moves on. Transits as well, if you're having a really prominent transit from a planet, like Uranus in Taurus opposing your Scorpio, then I mean, Uranus would be a kind of difficult planet to work with to
Yeah.
bring in energy, right? But like Jupiter in Taurus opposing your
Yeah.
Scorpio planets could be a time right now where you're able to bring Earth more in as well.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, with my lack of Earth, I've really sought out Earth in my life. I am
Mhm.
an herbalist. I live in Oregon. I'm surrounded by such beautiful green space. Like I have the
Mhm.
woods right outside my bedroom window, and I make a point to go hiking almost every single day. I'm skiing, I'm out in green space and connecting with the plants. And so, because I don't have that natural, earthy, grounded energy in my chart, it's like
Yeah.
I pull it in. I find ways to invite it into my life more.
Yeah, I love
Yeah.
that. I just quickly, I was going to say, I love that you brought up progressed planets as well,
Mhm.
because my progressed moon is now in Aquarius, which is my natal placement. And so I'm very
Yeah.
comfortable with that. But I got to say, when my progressed moon was in Capricorn, I was questioning my entire life. And what's so funny, when it had first moved into Capricorn, I
Yeah.
wasn't aware of progressed moons yet. I didn't
Sure.
know what was happening, which almost makes it more powerful when you can look back and think, wow, I was so confused why I suddenly wanted less freedom, more stability, more security, a corporate job for the first time in my life. At the time, I thought I was going out of my mind because I was
Yeah.
quite comfortable with my progressed moon in Sagittarius, all of those. But when it moved into Capricorn, I was like, and I'll just say it point blank, I was like, why do I want to be a boring person? And that's my fire looking down at earth. Like, why would I want that? And I
Yeah.
learned so many necessary lessons from being immersed in that earthy energy. Still, I
Mhm.
gotta say, when it moved into Aquarius, I was like, thank all the gods in the heavens. Far more comfortable. But I think it's just amazing that with astrology, we're
Mhm.
all given so many opportunities to learn, grow, and expand just through transits and progressions alone. So
Yeah.
I think just kind of taking hold of that energy when you have it and saying, hey, for this 2.5 year period of my progressed moon being in Capricorn, I'm gonna enjoy it. I'm gonna do the Capricorn way. And
Yeah.
then you'll move on to another theme, and that will be also lovely.
Yeah, I'm actually experiencing something kind of similar right now. My progressed moon is currently in Taurus, and I my progressed MC moved into Taurus as well in like December. And it's at like 1 degree now. And I remember like right when it changed, um, I started feeling like I changed. And I was working a lot of parties, I was working a lot of events, I was doing readings at a lot of like loud things. I was teaching a lot, I was traveling a lot for agro, for astrology, for learning. Like I was just constantly moving and doing. And there was a while where my progressed Venus, Moon, and MC were all in Aries. Um, and it was great. I was having a great time. But then and my progressed ascendant is Leo right now too. But then it like all of a sudden shifted, and I started to feel like I wanted more stability, and I started to feel like I wanted to just sometimes come home and not be out working these parties or events. And like it just I felt the shift, and that was actually like right when my progressed MC moved, was around the time that I was offered the shop. Um and I was
Wow.
like, that is so MC and Taurus, actually. Like,
It
just like
is.
I'm taking over a little metaphysical shop.
Yes, like a physical store selling
Very
physical
physical.
things and
Right.
yes. That's so
Yeah.
interesting. Wow.
Yeah. So it was very literal for me as well. And I was like, well, you know what? Like maybe I should lean into the stability of it and just kind of like embrace it rather than fighting it. And allowing some comfort into my life because I'm so used to that chaotic Aries energy that doesn't really have a whole lot of comfort, but that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Also, you talking about MC, descendant, all of that reminded me of
Yeah.
another thing that I think is so important with self-care that I actually
Mhm.
heard a little while ago on a video, and I think it blew my mind at the time. Might not blow your guys' minds, but I just wanna like chat about it here for a second. So the IC is
Yeah.
so important for
Mhm.
self-care. And I hadn't seen it through this lens before I saw this video on YouTube. I think her name is like Holy City Mystic or something like that. But
Okay.
anyway, she was giving this explanation. She said that the IC, and I'd heard this first part, the IC are the roots of the tree, of course, but
Mhm.
these roots are what is collecting the water, the nutrients for you to be able to shoot up, spread your leaves, and be the big public image of your MC. So
Mhm.
you need to take energy from the root of the base of the tree and then be able to shoot it out to your MC. So she was saying your IC, in her opinion, is one of the most important parts of your chart to look at how do I need to take care of myself? And she
Sure.
actually walked through the four elements of if your IC is in fire, air, earth, water, etc. What does it look like when you're not tending to yourself? And then
Mhm.
how can you tend to yourself? So if you guys want, we can kind of walk through those elements, but
Yeah.
I'm curious if you'd heard anything about IC being part of self-care before.
I haven't, but it makes a lot
Not
of
so
sense.
much.
It also
Yeah.
makes me think about like parenting your inner child and healing from past
Mhm.
wounds as well.
And
But yeah, it's
yeah,
like
like family stuff.
what makes you feel rooted and grounded and safe. And I
Mhm.
mean, your home is such an important place for caring for yourself as well.
Mhm. Absolutely.
Yeah, and it's funny because I feel like I talk so much about my MC being in Pisces. I never never think about my IC being in Virgo, like ever.
Exactly.
I
Exactly.
I very much like almost ignore my IC. Well, and I don't have very much under the horizon line at all. Most of my planets are
Mm.
public and above. Um, so my IC is kind of standalone, whereas my MC is conjunct my moon and Venus. Um, so my MC is just louder. It's more important. And
Exactly.
And
And it's
yeah.
also, before we
yeah.
like really dig into this, just to give a
Hmm.
little like theoretical explanation for folks who might be newer to astrology, like there's
Yeah.
the four angles, right? So you have your ascendant, which is the eastern horizon, the point on the eastern horizon that's rising at the moment you take your first breath, and that signifies you and yourself and your body. Then you have the MC, which is the point where the sun gets the highest in the sky in its trajectory and then begins to descend towards sunset. And that's the highest, most visible part of you. That's your career, your reputation, your public life. Then you have your descendant, which is the sunset point, the point where all the planets set over the western horizon. And that signifies the other and the partner as its opposite, the ascendant. So there's you and the other, like your romantic relationships, clients, how you partner with others. And then you have your IC, your Imam Coeli, and that is the very bottom of the chart, I believe, nadir. It's like nadir and
Yeah.
apex always throw me off,
Hmm.
but your Mercury and Virgo is like, yes, that's the
Yes.
right word. So that's the very bottom of the chart. That's the point where the sun and this is all tied back to Egyptian solar philosophy in ancient Egypt, but it's the point
Hmm.
where the sun gets to the very lowest in its underworld journey and begins to ascend back up towards sunrise. And so it's the lowest point in the chart, and it represents
Yeah.
the most private, internal, not necessarily secret. Like you might be very aware of them. Like secret things would be more in dark houses, but it can
Right.
represent things that are very private and internal to you, including your home and your family and your foundation. And it really is the angle we talk about the least in astrology. So I love that you're bringing it up, Devin, because the IC
Hmm.
is really important. It can represent your ancestors as well, your
Hmm.
childhood, your past.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Beautiful
your
explanation.
innermost self. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So, with that beautiful explanation, we could just end this call, but let's continue. I was gonna say we can just kind of briefly walk through the four elements, what this astrologer was saying, because I
Mhm.
think it was so helpful. And it's quick, but she said, so starting with fire, if your IC is in fire, and this makes so much sense, if you're not tending to yourself, if you're not taking care of yourself, you're going to get resentful. It's going to be that energy of like, why do I never get to do anything for myself? You know, that feels very fire. And so she said to tend to your IC in fire, you actually need to focus on yourself for a second. She gave an example that was so spot on. My IC is in fire. And I was like, oh, yes, girl. She said, imagine you and your partner say, okay, let's just do a chill movie night tonight. But your partner is really set on this one movie that you're like, iffy on. And you say, okay, let's do that. She said, you are not going to recharge as a fire IC if you watch a movie that your partner chooses that you don't really want. So she said, you actually need some self-centered action. You need some play. You need some joy. You need to like re-spark that fire and focus on yourself. And I just loved that she said, you're going to feel like, why can't I do anything for myself anymore? You know, like you can see it. So that was fire. Then she moved on to earth, and she said, with earth, if you're not tending to yourself, then you're going to get very critical of others, very like nitpicky, judgmental, like you're noticing everything that's wrong, you know, and it totally makes sense. She said, so then to tend to your earthy IC, you need to get back to the earthy, tangible things. So whether you're literally gardening, foraging for mushrooms, going for a walk outside, going for a hike in the woods, or the tangible things of reorganizing, cleaning your kitchen, planning a vacation, like putting things into action so that you feel rooted again and you can kind of come back to, okay, I don't need to be critical of everyone else. Let me focus on my own stuff. So that was fire and earth. And then she said for water, if you're not tending to your watery IC, you're going to become kind of emotionally manipulative of others. Maybe you're guilting people into things, kind of seeking that pity a little bit, and you just end up taking that low road of water. So to tend to your water, tend to your inner child. I think, Alicia, you were saying that a minute ago. Like whether your inner child needs to have a good cry or play, let them do that. And then also, as we were saying at the beginning of this episode, be near water, whether you go to the ocean or you just put on like a fountain YouTube video, that works too. So that was water. And then the last one is air. And she said, if you're not tending to your air IC, you probably will start to detach from others a little, kind of self-isolate. And in that case, what you actually need is intellectual stimulation. Like you need to come back to life. She said she has an air IC and she will go on what she calls information binges, where she just listens to a ton of podcasts, YouTube videos, like read books, talk to people, just stimulate your mind again to come back to center. And I'll just end with one of my favorite quotes. Someone commented on her YouTube video and it made me laugh out loud. It said, for some people, they have to read for self-care. That would be air IC. And for others, they need self-care from too much reading. And I just thought that was so beautifully said. So if you're listening right now, just kind of thinking, okay, where is your IC? Which element is it in? What is kind of the low road when I'm not tending to myself? And then how can I bring myself back to center? So anyway, that's my little rant, but I just thought it was too brilliant to not share.
Yeah, and that's so funny because I was actually just having this conversation yesterday. But I took 4 separate walks yesterday. Just because I didn't like for whatever reason, I just didn't feel like I could think straight. I was just really tired and like didn't sleep well. And I was just so like I just felt so off, and a bunch of people just kept sending me like voice messages yesterday, and like Alicia, yours were about like logistics for our trips. Like they were all like important things, and I kept feeling like I just wanted to like listen and respond, but there were so many people like working in the shop, or like there was just too many people in there. And but because there were so many people in there, I was able to step away and take a walk. And because my friend could like take over and help me if anyone needed to be checked out. And so I was like, you know what? I need to take another walk. And I took like 4, and I find 4-leaf clovers, and that has always been my like they speak to me, and I make jewelry out of them. I sell them, and I do a lot with them. And I was finding the biggest four-leaf clovers yesterday. They're in my phone case right here, actually. Like, I was finding the biggest ones
Wow.
on this walk. Giant.
Oh my gosh, they're beautiful.
They're so pretty. And like, I don't know, I just remember thinking like this is what grounds me. Like every time I feel like I'm going for a walk and I'm like more aligned, like that's when they start to appear. And yeah, I was like saying that all day yesterday. So I see in Virgo in the third house.
I
Yeah.
love that. And I also love, Devin, like all of the suggestions you're giving. And we'll definitely link
Mhm.
to that YouTube video you're talking about in the comments
Yeah.
so folks can go check it out as well if they want more. But just how simple and accessible and small a lot of these things are, right? Like self-care does not need to be these big, grandiose things. Like they're little acts that you're doing every
Yeah.
day. And really what like is coming to mind for me is the importance of just taking really small, short moments throughout the day to check in with yourself, actually see how you're feeling, how you're doing, and what do you need? Do you need fresh air? Do you need to get up and move? Do you need to sit down and rest? Do you need like some connection with others? Do you need to eat or drink water? You know,
Hmm.
like what it's really these small things, and it's just prioritizing tending to yourself because I know, right, like modern life is just hectic and we're all working like
Right.
5 jobs and commuting and this and that and overstimulated by our phones, and there's like so much going on. So it's not like you have to like carve out this big night to like take a bath and make a fancy dinner and do all these things and go to the spa. It's like really literally just taking a beat and giving yourself a small thing of what you need can be so nourishing.
Yeah, it's so true.
Yeah.
Even for me yesterday, so my IC is in fire. It's in Leo, conjunct my sun. And yesterday I had just a busy day. This whole week I've just been bogged down by earthy tasks. Just so
Hmm.
much work and practical stuff and logistics, kind of like what you were saying, Lori. And so
Hmm.
yesterday before dinner, I had cooked dinner, another kind of earthy thing that I was not in the mood to do. And I said, you know what? I really need to go out in the sun, recharge my Leo self, and I need to
Yeah.
dance because I love to dance, just like you, Lori. I grew up a
Hmm.
competitive dancer. And so it was so literal for my Leo IC. I
Yeah.
put myself in the sun and I danced. And I didn't even care that people were walking by the house and they could see me in the backyard. And my Leo self was like, don't care, I'm just going. And after just 10 minutes, I
Hmm.
felt like a different human. And so,
Yeah.
like you were saying, Alicia, just asking yourself throughout the day, like, oh, how am I doing and what do I need right now? Do I need a couple deep breaths? Do I need some fresh air? Do I need to sit down or do I need to get up? So,
Right.
tending to that.
Yeah, and I think just to add on to that, like that flow state is so important, and just like finding the ability to like just be lost in it. And that's aggro for me, like being able to just like flow and like work on something that is really hard, but I know I'm going to eventually get it, and like just getting in that flow of like what am I working on? What am I doing? How can I like do it better? That is always a thing that like resets me completely. Like it always makes me feel like I'm ready to take on anything.
And it's interesting. That sounds to me kind of Virgo IC, returning
Hmm.
to the same thing to improve a little bit at a time, a
Right.
routine, a system, physical body, like all of that
Right.
health related.
Well, and it's funny because I don't really get in flow state from doing moves that I already know I can do.
Mm,
What puts me in flow state is I'm going to do this skill that I don't think I can do, but I don't know why. But for whatever reason, we're going to spend 2 hours on it because now I'm hyper fixated. Like that that's what like puts me into flow state, because then I'm like, how can I do it better? How can I do it again? And it like doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but that's like the thing that really just like sucks me into it. And that's like the thing I love about it. And it makes me learn something new, and it helps me like connect and work with people, and like Learning to delegate has been a big thing I've been working on lately anyway. So like learning how to like ask for help and like trust people.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, and so I feel like that all like very much interconnects as well.
Absolutely. Anything else you
Yeah.
want to add to that, Alicia, or should we move on to another part in the chart you can look at?
Let's move on.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is another fun one that I had heard a while back that has stuck with me because it's so easy to remember and it's kind of fun to implement. So I'm curious if you guys have heard it.
Mhm.
One of my teachers was saying, when you rise in the morning, you should
Mhm.
tend to your rising sign. And she said,
Hmm.
because literally the sun is rising and your rising sign, of course, is your physical body. And so she said, every morning, tend to your rising sign. So I'll give you an example. With me being a Gemini rising, first thing I do every day after I've, of course, gone to the bathroom, brushed my teeth, hydrated myself, I go for a very fast paced walk listening to an educational podcast. And so I am literally, it's like I become the air element because I'm just one of those ridiculous power walkers as I'm absorbing information, words, talking. And so it's like I become my Gemini rising and it sets me up for my day. And then I kind of move into my Leo sun and I do like some strength training, get that fire. I dance a little bit. And so you can kind of not necessarily move through your whole chart, but just focusing on your rising sign when you arise. Like one of my teachers, the one that was teaching this, is a Virgo rising. And
Mhm.
growing up, because she has so much air and fire as well, she never resonated with her Virgo rising. And then when she started tending to it in the morning, by setting these rituals for herself. Every morning she wakes up, she does things with crystals, she prays in the four directions, like very ritual system,
Mm.
very Virgo, tending to your health. She now loves her Virgo rising. It's like she's kind of grown into it. But anyway, I just love the concept that when you rise, tend to your rising sign.
Yeah, I actually have heard that one before.
Yeah. So what would that look like for you?
I think for me, like, I love to have a slow, flowy, comfortable morning without having to do anything.
Mhm.
With your Cancer
With my
rising, just like
Cancer
this like
rising.
cozy,
Oh,
homey, like
that makes so much
Yeah,
sense.
it's so funny. So every morning, first of all, I don't book anything before noon if I don't have to. The shop opens at 11, so like I don't have to be there like, until then. My earliest morning is Sunday mornings when I teach Zumba at 10 o'clock. So
Love that.
yeah, and that's once a week. I very consciously make sure I don't have anywhere to be for at least like 3 to 4 hours after I wake up. And I like roll out and I make my whole coffee ritual, which like I have a like whole station for it. So I like have a whole morning routine with my little coffee, my French press. And then I sit down and I pull my card of the day and I journal and I write and I just sit there and I drink the entire French press and I just vibe. And then eventually I'm like, okay, now I'm good. And then I'll like get up and take a walk or whatever. But yeah, I
That's
like,
so Cancer rising
it's
sign.
so funny.
So, oh my gosh. And what about you, Alicia? What would that be for your rising sign?
it so I'm a Libra rising and I also
Okay.
have Mercury like
Mhm.
conjunct my ascendant, super,
Okay.
super energetic. And
Yeah.
I
Yay.
definitely have the most mental energy first thing in the morning and early in the day. Like I love to get up and like lie in bed and read or journal. Also with that Venus ruled ascendant, like messaging people, even like the kind of lower vibration of this is just lying on Instagram, honestly, and being like, but I want to feel
Yeah.
connected. I want to feel connected to the world around me, which is very Venusian. And like
Mhm.
there's so much mental stimulation that comes through in the morning for me. And I know if I need to do something that uses my mind, like I need to do it earlier in the day, not later in the day.
Mm.
And then to bring in kind of a Hellenistic addition to this, also looking at the ruler of your ascendant as another
Yes.
way that you could really engage with that. And so with my Venus in Scorpio, like feeling really like intimately connected to people or tending to my emotional needs when I wake up, or, Lori being just a little more impulsive with, what do I feel like doing with your Aries moon? And like, is it this or this? And like also drinking a whole thing of coffee. Or like Devon, I'm thinking of like the way you engage with information and how that's just reiterated with your Mercury and
Yeah,
Virgo,
Virgo.
and so looking
Yes.
at not just your ascendant, but your ascendant ruler and what are your needs, especially for me having an ascendant ruler in detriment in a dark house, like really tending to like, well, what does my Libra rising need? And then how do I really tend to what my Venus needs to accomplish that?
Yeah, and I was actually gonna say the same thing when you were done, because I have Mars on my ascendant, and in that mutual reception to my Aries moon chart ruler on my MC with Venus. So it's very loud. And I think my mornings, my quiet mornings, are actually the only consistency I have in my entire life. I need a lot of chaos. I need a lot of inconsistency. I need a lot of like, don't know what I'm doing day to day. Like, I've have a very strict set calendar that I like, have to write down every single thing or I'll forget it. And so when I was living fully into that, I was just like getting lost all the time and like forgetting to show up to things. And so the only thing that really helped, because I'm very much a night owl and a morning person, which like doesn't really work, but works. Um, Aries. Um, but I found that like not planning anything in the morning so that I can just like not stress, wake up when I want to. There's no rules. I can intuitively eat and sleep and live and vibe, and I can just wake up and then sit with my coffee. And while I'm doing that, while I'm journaling, while I'm pulling my card, while I'm resetting, that's when I open my calendar and I'm like, okay, where do I need to be today? Like, let's plan this out. And any day that I like do take a gig that's early in the morning, or I work an event, or if my schedule is like thrown off and I like don't have my morning, I like still try to wake up an hour before I need to be there, or like I still try to like have a little bit of that time because it like really throws me off if I can't do it on my terms. Like it needs to be my way. It needs to be when
Aries
I
moon.
want to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, falling into that too, like leaning into your chart ruler, like when I started living my life aligned with the moon and allowing myself to have like my little Aries outbursts, like, sometimes being an Aries moon with a Cancer rising, like, and my prominent Mars, like there are moments where I would just feel angry and didn't know why, or I would feel sad and didn't know why, or like, like emotions come so fast, but then they like leave so fast. Like I can have an entire outburst and it's gone and totally done in like 10 minutes and I forgot about it. Like I'm already like didn't even happen. I don't know what you're talking about.
Mhm.
So it's pretty crazy. Like when I started just allowing those outbursts instead of being like, that's stupid. Why am I angry? I'm like, no, maybe I need to scream. Like maybe I need to just shake. Maybe I need to like, like allowing yourself because Aries is a baby. Like let it be a baby.
Especially with that Cancer energy too. It's like Aries
Yeah,
Cancer
I
is like
am the baby.
and
Yes.
I think that's such an important and Devin was talking about this at the beginning as well with self-care is like using astrology and self-awareness to really
Yeah,
embrace who you are, right? And especially with
right,
someone who like my ascendant ruler is in a dark house, so it's kind of hard for me to see or feel that. And then astrology, like when I started learning about like my Venus conjunct Pluto in Scorpio being my ascendant ruler, like so intense, and then allowing myself to have that intensity and to live into that intensity and like the world needs you to be who you are. Like only
right.
you are you. Like literally the planets only, and the angles and everything only align in the exact same way as they did at your birth chart every 26,000 years. And
Right.
so, yeah, there might be some other people. Like, I actually have two Gemini rising friends who were born with really similar ascendants on the same day. And so, like, they are actually twins and very similar. Just so Gemini
Wow.
rising, Elias is one of them, who was on our
Yeah.
podcast earlier. But there's not like you are you and you need to be you. And like that's such an important way to engage with self-care. And astrology can be such a helpful tool of like seeing like, oh, Lori, with your Mars in Cancer, your moon in Aries, like, yeah, you do just need to like let it out and then it passes through you. Right. And just embracing that is a really powerful self-care tool.
Yeah. One of my
Yeah.
favorite things that one of my astrology teachers would always do in her readings is she will give her clients metaphorical permission slips. For example, Lori, you get
Mhm.
to be a baby who has these outrageous outbursts of anger and you don't know why.
Right.
Or Lori, you get to like whatever, or Alicia, you get to do whatever. It's really helpful to also do that for
Mhm.
yourself. Once you
Yeah.
start to know your chart, what are the things that maybe you've even struggled with about yourself? And if you actually see, wait a second, it was literally written in the stars. Give yourself
Mhm.
that permission slip to just be that. And of course, aim for the high road of those
Right.
signs or those houses, but you can also sometimes sink into the low road, and that's okay. You're a
Oh,
human.
absolutely. Well, and I think a big part, at least for me, like it wasn't that I didn't like that part or anything. It was that I didn't understand it. Like, because Aries is so quick to react.
Mhm.
And so, I would have these like really intense reactions sometimes. And I like wouldn't really know, Leo, I wouldn't really know why. He's being
Yeah.
very aggressive. He's trying to shut my computer now.
Oh, as cats always
Um,
do.
yes. Oh, but yeah, it was just one of those things where I had to be like, you know what? Like, I don't know why I feel angry, but I do. So I'm angry. Like
Mhm.
it is what it is. Or, like I feel really happy and excited right now. I don't really know why, but I'm excited. I'm going to celebrate. Like just allowing those little like movements of the emotional body and just like I think finding out I was an Aries moon was the thing that made the most sense in the world to me because I also have an Aquarius stellium. And so Aquarius is not like that,
Yeah.
especially
Yeah.
when Saturn's involved.
And especially like your sun, like most of us, like that's where we start is our sun sign. And then we might be like, oh,
Right.
I don't really resonate with my sun sign. And it's like, well, where's the ruler of your sun sign? Like, are you a night chart with like, is your moon more important? Like, what's your ascendant doing? So when you
Right.
start to learn more about your chart, it just gives you so many more access points for understanding yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah, and
Yeah.
there can be so many reasons why certain things are acting up or being the way that they're being.
Yeah. And also, I think in this self-care talk, just because we started talking about this already, but I feel like we gotta nail it down here, is obviously the moon. End of
Yeah.
sentence. The moon is so important. And, not only, of course, is your moon kind of the way that you react emotionally, but one of my favorite phrases that I once heard about the moon is that your moon, both the sign and the house, shows what you need to be emotionally nourished. And
Hmm.
so just by looking to your moon, so for me, for example, my moon is in Aquarius in the ninth house. And so
Hmm.
when I'm being kind of an unconventional, progressive individual where I'm studying spirituality, philosophy, I'm literally traveling to foreign lands, anything like that makes me feel so expansive and nourished and happy. And so just noticing where your moon is placed
Hmm.
and tend to that. Like, what does an Aries moon need? Well, it needs to move. Well, sometimes it needs to shout. It needs to be loud. It's like
Hmm.
just let yourself tend to that moon, both sign and
Yeah.
house. And I think that helps massively.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially
And
if you're a Cancer rising too.
yeah, especially with Cancer and really
Yeah.
prominent Cancer placements in general, but
That
especially
too.
rising. And also looking at your moon phase. And Lori and I did a
Yes.
whole episode about the phases of the moon, but that's going to
Yeah.
modulate the moon so much. Like an Aries full moon, is
Mm-hmm.
gonna, or like a waxing Aries moon, because like the waxing moon already has heat. So that might feel even
Mm-hmm.
more natural, or there might be so much heat there. But if you have this dark,
Yeah.
balsamic, waning Aries moon, where are the contradictions there? Or I have a
Right.
Pisces moon that's in the first quarter phase, and the first quarter phase is associated with the like temperament of summer. And so, Pisces
Mhm.
temperamentally is cold and wet, but then the first quarter moon phase is hot and dry. So what are those
Right.
contradictions of these like internal sweet,
Yeah.
sensitive Pisces things, but then I'm like pushing out into the world, and knowing what your moon phase is and how much light,
Mm-hmm.
how much vitality you have through your moon phase is another key to how you tend to yourself. And also looking at your progressed moon, which Lori and I have also done an episode about that. We've
Yeah.
been talking about progressions a lot in this episode, but progressions move really slowly, and your progressed moon moves the most quickly of any of your progressed planets. And so seeing, where is your natal moon, where is your progressed moon, it might, like my progressed moon had been in Pisces for the past few years, which felt very familiar for me with my natal moon in Pisces, and now it's moved into Aries, which is an entirely different energy, right? And so that's like a little
Hmm.
more uncomfortable for me to
Welcome.
really lean in. I'm so excited actually about my progressed moon in Aries. It's like
It's so
Pisces is
fun.
so internal and sweet and like this jellyfish floating through the ocean. And then Aries is like, let's take some action about
You
it.
should just go buy some boxing gloves now.
Yeah, I've been
Get
drinking
it
a lot of
started.
coffee.
Yeah.
So, looking, and sometimes your progressed moon might be calling you or saying that you need certain things at this phase in your life that might even feel contradictory to what your natal moon says as well. So, there's just so much complexity with your moon and how you care for yourself, and so many ways to look at it. And also, just like a little plug that Lori and I both give astrology
Mhm.
readings. Devin, do you give astrology readings?
I'm not currently right now because I'm in the midst of moving to Thailand and everything in my life is changing. But this summer, I'll be opening up my books for readings and all the fun stuff again.
Beautiful. So
Yeah.
generally all three of us give astrology readings.
Hmm.
So reach out if this feels like a lot of information and you want an astrologer to help you sort through it.
Yeah.
That's why we're here to like study all of this and entrench ourselves in all of this so that we can help share it with you. But yeah, there's so many different ways you can look at your moon and self-care. But even just grounding it back to what Devin said of starting with like the sign and element and what that calls can be a really simple starting place.
Absolutely. I just thought of one more thing that we could throw in
Yeah.
here for self-care for fun if you guys are down.
Absolutely.
So I had seen something a while ago that talked about the sixth house and how you should look
Sure.
to obviously, the sign and all of that just to see what throws you off in life and then how to get back on track. So for example, um they were giving the example like a Capricorn sixth house. Probably what you struggle with the most, this is very simple, work life balance. When you're
Hmm.
working too much, your health and wellness is going to be thrown off. Or for a Sagittarius sixth house, if you feel like you don't have freedom, if you're feeling constricted in any way, you might literally get sick. And so, even just looking to your sixth house to see, okay, what are the needs of the sign that rules the sixth house? And how can I give that to myself so that I don't fall into the potential trap? Does that resonate with you guys too? Do you like
Yeah,
that?
and
Okay.
I have so much sixth house energy in my chart.
Yeah.
Like my sect light, my moon is in the sixth house, and she's very closely conjunct Saturn. And I am an
Hmm.
herbalist. I'm a healer. I'm very in that kind of
Wow.
health space. And the sixth house is also a place of our daily routines and the daily work that it takes to tend to our
Hmm.
bodies. And so looking towards the sixth house is like if you do have a Capricorn sixth house, making sure that you are very structured and regular about and grounded and serious with yourself about what your body needs to care for yourself. Whereas if you have a Sag sixth house or a Pisces, Gemini, a more mutable sixth house, allowing yourself, like for me with my Pisces sixth house, I have this like smorgasbord of self-care activities, and then whatever I intuitively feel like I need in the moment, I kind of pull into my life. And
Yeah.
so the sixth house really can like it's such an indicator into these like daily routines. It's a cadent house, right? The
Right.
third, sixth, ninth, and 12th houses are the cadent houses. They're these like metacosmios is an ancient way they referred to them, like world between
Hmm.
world, these liminal energies of these transition spaces. And so those houses speak to these kind of transitory things that like you kind of like Sisyphus, like you do it and then you have to do it again and you do it again, right? Like you take a shower, you eat some food, and then you're hungry again. And it's like these constant liminal maintenance things
Yeah.
that we can
Very
really overlook, but are
Mhm.
really important to like stabilizing the rest of our chart and our lives.
Yeah, very hamster wheel.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Mm.
absolutely. Yeah, very well explained. So, I mean, there are a million ones for everyone listening. You can see there are a million and one ways to look at how to tend to yourself, how to keep yourself grounded, sane, happy, healthy. And these were just some. I mean, I had many more ideas, but
There's
I'm just
so
going with the
many.
flow here. I know, I know. So I hope at least one thing that we said resonated, and you can look to your IC or your sixth house, your rising sign, and just one thing at a time.
Yeah, absolutely. I also pulled the Queen of Cups this morning, which is the self-care card.
Are you serious?
Yeah, I thought that was
What
really
the?
funny.
I love that.
I know. I was like, I'll have to bring her up.
I love that. I just came up with an idea. Do you guys want to round out by we can each just share our favorite self-care practice or
Sure.
like a technique we're obsessed with right now or something like that?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Do you
Yeah,
want to
you go
start, Lori?
first?
Oh no.
Okay. I
I
can.
need time to think for a second.
Okay, fair enough. Well, for me, movement is definitely a big part of it. I like to choreograph new things. I love to teach people. I think my moon is on my MC with Venus, both in Pisces, but like late degrees. And it is in my 10th house. So career and the things that I do and the things that I'm seen for and known as. Those are what always comes first. So I have a hard time separating work and life because work is life and life is work, but also it's all play. So none of it is work and none of it, I don't know. It's like always so confusing, but I never feel like I'm ever working, even though I'm always technically working. And so I think for my like Aries moon, my chart ruler being like so prominent top of the chart and gaining in light as well. Because it's a waxing phase. It's very early on. Um, I have always just needed a lot of movement. I take a lot of walks to ground myself, and acro has always just been the most healing thing because it is play. Like being able to just go and play. Like that's the best thing in the world. And like yes, it's my job, but I never feel like I'm doing a job when I'm there. I'm just playing, playing with my friends. And creating and cultivating community from that space has always been really important to me. So like traveling for it, and I'm hosting like a big acro lock-in this weekend. So we have like I think 60 people coming in town to like probably stay on my couch, and then we're sleeping at the gym on Saturday night. And we did this for New Year's too, and we had like 80 people sign up total, and it's just incredible. Like it's so much fun. And then just even with giving readings, it's just always felt like also play. Like I just get to talk to people all day and just like talk about what I love. And so work like is a very healing thing for me. But also like taking really long walks. And I was reading an article recently that was talking about how one of the best things you can do for brain function, for cognitive functioning, is actually walk and talk at the same time. Because it like gets, first of all, it gets your body moving. So there's like a full, and walking is one of the best things you can do for your body anyway. Like there's so many health benefits of just walking, which is crazy. But like getting that movement in, but also using your brain and talking, is incredibly healing, but it also like gets all of the parts of your brain moving in like a multitasking kind of way. Um, and so I take a lot of walks with friends. Every time I have to like listen or send voice messages, I just go for a walk while I'm doing it. While I'm on the phone, I'm always pacing around my apartment, like just intuitively. I'm never able to like talk and sit for very long. So yeah, I think all of those things make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And
I love
coffee, always coffee.
that too. That too. I love that. What about you, Alicia?
Mhm.
Well, just quickly riffing off of Lori's like
Mhm.
little coffee comment, like
Yeah.
as an herbalist, tea as well, like building in tiny little routines. Like when I make my tea in the morning, I will like put the specific herbs that I want. Like I was skiing a lot in the mountains and I would in the winter before I tore my ACL, and I would put artemisia herbs in my cup and invoke Artemis and ask for her wildness, and then like pour my water over the tea and ask to be like sweet or grounded or protected. And so those, again, to the like really simple, small, accessible ways we can do this. Like if you're a big coffee drinker, turning
Mhm.
your morning coffee into this just like 3 5 minute moment to just connect with yourself and set some
Yeah.
intentions can be a really powerful way to build this in. But what I was gonna say as far as the self-care that I've been really leaning into in the past few years is connecting with outdoor space.
Mm.
I have a lot of sleep issues, and so focusing on my circadian
Same.
rhythm has been really, really important. And so, like we're always thinking about sleep routines and nighttime and all of these things we're doing in the evening to help with sleep, but making sure that you're going out in the middle of the day and connecting with the sun, and like the sun being up in the top of the sky and like helping set your circadian rhythm, or waking up and going out and like witnessing the sunrise or witnessing the sunset and helping your body feel connected to the movement of the sun is so important. And then of course, getting vitamin D, just the way, Devon, earlier when you're talking about dancing in the sunlight, like the
Hmm.
sun is so life affirming and vitalizing, and just being connected to it. I do live in the Willamette Valley, so we'll have like a month straight in Oregon, months straight where there literally is no light. So I recognize that's not always like you just won't see the sky. Like clouds will just move in and it'll be gray for
Oh,
months.
oh my
And they
gosh.
have
My
like ads
my
on the
Leo self
radio.
would be very sad.
They have ads
Very
on the
sad.
radio about how to deal with seasonal affective disorder, and it's I go to Utah
Yeah.
to ski. That's how I deal with it. But I do want to recognize like connecting with the sun is not always accessible, but even just going outside is, really important. Putting your bare feet in the earth, literally we are an electrical circuit. We're like this entire electrical circuit in our bodies, and are like putting your bare feet in the earth even when the earth is frozen, like even when it's wet and cold, is like actually grounding, like literally gives a place for your electrical energy to go. And like more symbolically, I'm very often out in nature. I've been holding a lot, and like a lot of grief and fear around like my torn ACL and my injury and everything I'm navigating with that, and just like asking the land to help hold it and to hold what's like too much for me to hold, because like that is what the earth does, that is what land does, is it holds us, just lying on the ground and feeling like gravity, like we are being held all right now just by the earth, and feeling into that and asking the earth to help you hold that in different ways. And then if you have access to plants at all, connecting, like even the dandelions growing out of the cracks in the pavement, if you're in a city, or just finding where the plants are around you and bringing that green space into your life. There's literally my herb teacher, Emily with Artemisia Academy, was talking about how our muscles relax when we see like crossed lines and like wiggly like tree branches and things like that. Like when we're outside and we see these like more chaotic patterns that exist in nature, it actually relaxes our musculoskeletal system. Whereas like the more like rigid parallel lines of the buildings that we build and put ourselves in cause more tension, which literally, I mean,
That makes
squares
sense.
rely on tension,
Oh, I
you know.
love that.
So just like bringing those sort of natural spaces into your like physical energetic space for just a little bit can have really, really positive benefits.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's beautiful. I love that. Well, I would second everything everyone here said, but to throw something new in there, Alicia, when you were talking about the every morning when you're making your tea, you're kind of asking yourself, okay, what do I want to invoke today? What do I want for myself? What do I need? And then you choose the herbs, based on that. I definitely do that with breath work. Now, I'm not going to lie and say I do breath work every day. I've kind of fallen off the bandwagon, as many of us do, but I do like to quote unquote mix the breathwork cocktail that I need for that day. And I'll just share my favorite technique that I've been obsessed with recently. You both might know this, Lori, you especially might know this, but Brahmari or bee's breath is my favorite technique. And it's so simple. I won't teach like all parts of the technique because it gets a little bit funky with hand gestures and things, but the gist is that you breathe in through your nose and then you seal your lips and you just hum out a really long, slow exhale. And by both elongating your exhale and using your vocal cords for the hum, you're going to help stimulate your vagus nerve, which completely helps to calm your nervous system. So
Mhm.
I just do, mm, and I do that like 3 to 5 times and elongate that hum as long as you possibly can. And on
Yeah.
the other side of those breaths, you just feel so grounded. So that's been a favorite for sure. I mean, I do that before podcast episodes, I do that before speaking engagements. It just makes me feel really
Mhm.
centered and chill.
Yeah. Air.
Air, exactly. But
Mhm.
grounded air. So that's good for
Mhm.
me. Definitely. Wow. This was
Yeah.
so fun. I could talk about so much with you guys, but I feel like we threw a lot of really fun, helpful tidbits in there.
Yeah, I think
Absolutely.
this has been just like so many little rabbit holes and fun
Yeah.
information, and
Mhm.
so great to have you on, Devon. We usually wrap up by just sharing a little bit about what we have going on, how people can engage with us. We'll put links in the show notes to like ways to connect with Devon, but do you want to just share a little bit about what you're up to? And this will come out
Absolutely.
in mid-May, but like share for your
Okay.
summer, like share for, down the road too.
Totally. Totally. So, as we're recording this now, at least for the past year or so, I've mainly been focusing on building up my podcast, It's All Magic. So people can find my podcast on YouTube just under my name, Devon Rochelle Heyn. We can put that in the show notes. Also, every podcast platform, as I'm sure you guys do the same. So you can
Mhm.
find me all over the place, Instagram as well, at It's All Magic Podcast. And my personal is Devon underscore Rochelle underscore. And right now I say I'm focusing on the podcast because there's been just a lot of transition in my life. As I was talking about my Capricorn progressed moon, I had a corporate job until about 5, 6 months ago that I kind of lived out that part that I needed with my Capricorn progressed moon. And then I was very over it. So I left that and then, really threw myself into the podcast. So right now, once I move to Thailand next week with my husband, late May, then I'm gonna, reset up my website, get readings back up and running. So we can put all that, all the necessary links in there. But if anyone's interested, especially in subscribing to my YouTube channel, you can expect probably some Thailand vlogs, lots of astrology advice, breathwork tutorials, all the good stuff. So I'll be in there. I'll just be figuring it out once I land in Thailand.
That's
Amazing.
awesome. That's like so fun that you're moving to Thailand right as Jupiter moves into your first house as well.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's good
big
Exactly.
timing.
expansion and probably a little bit of chaos. Jupiter and Gemini.
Yes, exactly. And my progressed moon is moved back into my natal placement of
Mm,
ninth house, Aquarius. That's
Mm.
also where my Jupiter is. My Jupiter is conjunct my moon.
oh,
So that area of my life just feels expansive and joyful. So quite happy with that
beautiful.
choice.
Progress lunar returns are such powerful periods in our
The
lives. They really
best.
help us start to set ourselves up for our Saturn returns. So I hope
Exactly.
it's nourishing for you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And thank you for having me. This has been so much fun. I love the work that you're both putting out into the world. I mean, even this podcast is just super educational, but also enjoyable. So keep doing what you're doing. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Devin.
Yeah, thank
Of
you.
course.
And Lori, what do you
Alicia.
have? Oh,
Oh,
we're
I was gonna ask you the same thing.
okay. I'll go and then you can go.
All right, you go first.
So I have reopened my books now. So I'm offering astrology readings. I offer asteroid astrology readings and herbal astrology readings and topical astrology readings. So we can really help you sort through what's going on in your life, help you kind of prioritize like Is it a really good time to be focusing on work and shifting our career or relationships if you have specific questions about what's going on in your life? Lori and I have been doing a lot of work talking about the asteroids, and there's over 27,000 named asteroids. So it can feel
Mm-hmm.
really overwhelming to dig into, but they can be so
But they're so
powerful for helping
fun.
you know like what myths and stories you're embodying in your life. And like we've talked about in this episode, just helping you kind of live into your truest self more. So that's a really great reading to get. And the herbal astrology readings are really talking about your health and your priorities and how you can look at like your birth chart and your temperament to understand that, but then also incorporating herbs and lifestyle advice from a vitalist perspective to just make you feel like really empowered for taking care of yourself and just like feeling good in a really accessible way in your life, feeling healthy and vital and safe in your body. So there's a link to my website down in the show notes. I would love to engage with you guys with some readings. Yeah. And what about you, Lori?
Yeah. Well, I mean, going off the asteroid thing real quick, I would love to do an episode on some of the more like self-care and like health related asteroids that I know we've talked about a little bit before, but I want to start deep diving into those next. But yes, I also offer asteroid readings and all types of regular readings. I've actually been doing a lot with astrocartography lately. I've had a lot of people come to me for like relocation readings or like travel readings. So that's been really fun to dive into, especially because that's a little more positive too.
Well,
Um,
astrocartography is how my
mhm.
husband and I decided on Thailand. We literally
Oh, I
had
believe that.
a
Yeah,
reading and she just said the best country right now would be Thailand. And we looked at each other and said, I, so we're going. We've
I
never
love
been.
that.
So anyway, just wanted to put that plug there.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love stories like that. I hear it a lot.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, and then otherwise I've just been hosting a lot at the shop and trying to get a lot of workshops in the books and I'm replanning tarot school right now, which is going to be um like in person, but also I'm going to record it as well. So I'll either sell the recordings or maybe do like a live stream. I haven't quite decided what I want to do with that yet this year, but yeah, I've just been planning a bunch of stuff, getting ready to go to Norwalk, getting ready for our retreat. Um I've been reading Demetra's textbooks for the retreat. So, yeah, just been studying a lot and kind of taking a little extra time to be a little slower. But I'm doing a lot of readings right now and that's about it.
Awesome.
Beautiful. Well, thanks
Yeah.
everyone. And also we have
Yeah.
a Instagram for the Conversations with the Podcast or Conversations with the Planets podcast. So please go follow us there as well. Thanks everyone for listening. Let us know how
Yeah.
you're engaging in self-care, how you're tending to yourself. Yeah. Thanks everyone.
Yeah.
Yay. Thanks for having